Hi, Mike.
Hello.
Glad to have you for the next hour or so.
Glad to be here.
So I'm just going to get right into it. What is something that very few people agree with you on?
I mean, lots of things, I think. People disagree with me on. Yeah, it depends. Depends on what side of it you are. I believe that we experience success rather than achieve it. And there's a couple of things that I've kind of brought together in the musings and conversations and experiences that I've had that lead me to this belief that we experience success rather than achieve it. Firstly, the fact that most people couldn't tell you what success is. And it's one thing that we speak about so commonly in the media, in business, in friendship, and they're really successful. Oh God, I can't wait to be successful. But when you come to defining what success is, no one can really give you the specifics of what success is for them. So that's one thing. The second thing that I find really fascinating when it comes into the conversation of success is the fact that if we strive to achieve something, and if it's a big enough goal or point in time that we're going to be happy with achieving that success, typically by the time we get to it, our perception, our kind of attitude and feeling towards that is not what it was when we first set it.
It would have changed.
It always changes. Now, a lot of people think of money when they think of success because it's measurable, it's comparable, it's I was going to say real, it's not really real, but parts of it are real. Yeah. But if success for you is £1 million in the bank, then that's cool. Let's strive for that. But you don't just end up with £1 million in the bank. You will have a point where you get 700,000, 800,000, 900,000. I guarantee that when you get 999,000, 999 pounds, £1 million will not feel like success for you anymore.
Yeah.
And the science backs this up. There's actually something called hedonic adaptation, which is the innate human ability to adjust to our current situation, which is kind of a strange phenomenon. It enables us to deal with grief when we lose people, because if you lose a loved one, hedonic adaptation actually enables you to get used to this situation and become normal, and your highs and lows almost reset from your current situation. But that is what actually means that when we're there with £900,000 in the bank, our hedonic adaptation almost resets our balance for what is high and low, good and bad. And it's also called the hedonic treadmill because we're almost put on this, ever wanting more. So the thing people disagree with me or don't always agree with me is that actually I don't think that you achieve success. I think you experience success. I think you need to define what success is to you. And the best model I've sort of come up with up until now is to almost have a criteria for success. So many years ago now, I reflected on what had motivated me in order to do what I did, right? I've always run businesses. I've always done various different bits. And I realized that there was a time when I ran a paintballing company and success was all about money. If I went out with a team and I sold X amount of paintball tickets and I'd make X amount of money, it would either be successful or not successful. Then I did another company that was very socially focused, and it was all about just making impact. And success was the most amount of impact, or unsuccessful, least amount of impact. Then I did lots of consulting and it was all about adding value. Then I did, NEF program and went on like a learning experience, and it was all about learning was success. And I did another business at university, which actually I just loved. It was all about fun. So like success for me was how much fun can I have in the day? And having all of these experiences of feeling what really motivated me actually enabled me to take a step back and say, well, all of these are my criteria for success. And I was able to actually define how much money is enough, how much or how continually should I be learning, how much time should I spend with my friends and family, or what's the minimum for that, and what value should I be adding and things like that. And actually this criteria for success was something that I worked to experience. I would check on myself every day, week, month. Well, have I done this? Have I not done this? What is missing? And it would never be a case of, I've made too much money or I've made too little money, like I'm unsuccessful. It would be a case of saying, okay, cool. I've actually not really learned anything this week. So next week, I'm just going to spend a little bit of time doing, reading about this or watching this or having these conversations. And it almost became subconscious, rebalancing of this very defined criteria of success for me. And I hit this point, and I was probably 28. I hit this point of pure contentment. And what's the most amazing thing about that is in that moment, things move fast. You know, I was in flow, I was feeling great, and stuff was happening, and loads of things just kept on happening almost without me
effort.
It was kind of crazy. So yeah, it's almost a bit juju, right? That actually you find flow rather than push for the next thing. I think it takes a lot of work to figure out what success is for you, what your criteria is, what rituals, mechanics, frameworks you can put around it to kind of continue to experience and enjoy that.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to find out what success is for them, your advice is expose yourself as much as possible to different experiences, so that at every stage of your life, maybe success will mean different things, but eventually you will reach a point where you understand what works for you.
Exactly.
That reminds me of one of a travel company CEO that I've had on an episode. He said, Anthony Collias, hi. He said, I optimize for happiness on a day-to-day basis. Me and my work, or the reason I'm running like 2 businesses and building a team is I'm optimizing for happiness.
Yeah.
That's what it means for me to be successful.
Yeah.
I think that's also a different way to look at it. So either you figure it out earlier or later, take your time. You're not in a rush.
Well, I think also it's a really important part of it is to always ask questions as well. And I think one thing I love about entrepreneurship is it gives us options and choices. Yeah. And it doesn't always give us the ability to have an insane amount of flexibility and freedom. And, you know, sometimes it's really hard work and we have worse lives than if we were to have a job elsewhere. Yeah. But it does give us choices of how we do everything. And I think that actually we almost owe it to ourselves to look at the world, how things are going, and just ask ourselves, is this right for me? What's my authentic, true self way of being, beliefs, and just making changes where possible and almost feeling it out. The second point is that it definitely changes. Yep. My criteria for success I think I was 23 when I set this. It was probably 28 where I was like, I'm here, I'm feeling it, I'm experiencing it. And it's definitely changed since. Like for me now, health is way more important. It didn't even come up on that first one. Whereas now health is a big thing. I'm married now, so like, you know, I'm thinking about.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm thinking about like the next stages of my life with my wife and my family and things like that.
Yeah. So what moments in your earlier life that made you who you are today, or made you have that mindset?
Really good question. How early are we talking?
I don't know, like as long as you can remember.
Do you ever get it where you like have an early memory and you're like, oh, maybe I just remember seeing the photo of that and you've made up the story? It's funny how we do that. True. When you said that, there's one that came into my mind, but it's not actually that early. It was probably when I was 19. Basically, I ran a paintballing company, and this came about in a really weird way where I was chatting to somebody in a pub garden, and this guy was like, oh, I really like the way you kind of like chat. I think I was just being silly or like trying to like convince somebody to do something or whatever. It sounds weird. It wasn't weird. And this guy was like, oh, I really like the way you do that. Like I run a paintball company. Do you want to come and sell for the paintball company? And I was like, cool, why not? I had a reading week the next week. So I went on his paintball stand in Telford, I think it was. And I worked with one of his other salespeople, and we basically, people will know the selling paintball tickets in shopping centres and stuff like that. We did that for a week. I remember specifically, I made £1,212 in that week, and that was just my commission. And I thought, wow, like, there's an industry here, right? There's money here. This is interesting. I'm getting energy from it. So I actually pitched the owner of the business at the end of the week the idea for me to take over his sales operations. So look, I figured out how this works. I know loads of people that are like great at like chatting and whatever else. Let me recruit people, build teams out, and we'll sell your tickets. And it was like, let's do it. So I then started a business, and that business basically became the promotions company for this paintball company. I hired like a few of my friends. We really did an amazing job. It was so much fun.
Amazing.
what
was your dream when you were a child?
Do you know
that was not in a question.
No. Do you know what? It's really funny. I'm 33. I only remembered this dream that I had probably 4 years ago. After I feel like I'd sort of worked towards this dream, it's kind of strange. I used to have this recurring dream that I ran this business with loads of like happy, friendly people. So this was young when I had this dream, and I didn't know what anyone did. We were all just having fun, right? And it was in the building, because it was like a tower. There were floors that people did different things on, different businesses on.
We were.
Yeah, maybe. And there were like lines, like almost like sections of the business that did different types of work. And I never fully understood it, right? I think in hindsight, I was dreaming up like a matrix organization. Right? I don't know how much of this is me post-rationalizing it, but I had this dream of basically just creating things that involved people that were kind of fulfilled and happy. And I think before I understood what business was and all that sort of stuff, I think that kind of human element for me was so incredibly important. And then actually, you know, we've grown term partners and we've got a few different businesses and we have people that work on different skill sets across the different businesses and things like that. And it was only a few years ago that I was like, that's sort of what I used to think about when I was younger. But the kind of stepping stone from that into the other one, it was mainly boredom. I always remember being not mentally stimulated enough by the things that I should have been enjoying at my age. I wrote to all of my favorite companies telling them I had the best marketing idea. And at 13, I was doing a pitch for like a made-up marketing idea at Silver Spoon Sugar to like their board and their marketing direction and things like that. So I've just always wanted to do stuff.
Do you come from an entrepreneurial family?
My dad is very entrepreneurial, but he is not a full-time entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. So he has, you know, my mum and dad have built a bit of a property portfolio. My dad's always been kind of like always keen to buy and sell things and do things like this, but he has like a real
entrepreneurial spirit.
Entrepreneurial spirit, but also like a real corporate job.
So what is something that you do every day that helps you feel fulfilled? And I know we talked about how transparency comes in first for you, how you want to be authentic in the way you deal with people and surround yourself with the right people that support your journey. Is that part of your fulfillment, or is there something completely different that you do that helps you achieve that?
I mean, it definitely is, and I think I definitely try and surround myself with people that are like that. I'm actually having an experience at the moment where there's somebody that I'm connected with business-wise that the relationship isn't great, and it's very rare. It's probably the one time in my career where I can put that out, and I actually feel like this person's being a bit unjust, and I feel like that's triggering stuff inside of me that I'm not even sure of, right? Because I've sort of created the world and the life and the business that we have, and now there's like something in it. I'm almost observing it, being like, oh, that's not fair, and that doesn't make me feel great, like I'm some sort of baby, right? But actually, it's an interesting exercise having this situation happening. It's not like a major situation, it's just an interesting one. And but practices I do. One of them is continued learning is really important. That's part of my kind of criteria for success. And for that continued learning, I actually try and carve out and create time. So for many years, I used to do 30-day challenges. Every day I'd do something every day for 30 days. So I would learn French for an hour every day for 30 days. I would do a good deed for the day every day for 30 days, enough to pick up a habit, things like that. And that was really good. Then you know, life happened and it's hard to put all of that time aside every day. But you know, I'll have a principle of exploring something. If I felt like I've just been churning and I'm not learning, I'll try and take myself out of that, even for 10 minutes, just to figure something out, learn something new. The other two things that I think are really important for me is firstly, making sure that I've created replicable or standalone value. And honestly, this for me, it is such a huge difference between how I feel at the end of the day if I've created something that I know will continue to have value beyond my input time. Mm-hmm. So if I'm doing work that is repetitive work, and I've done the work and I know that that work will fill up again tomorrow. We always have stuff like that needs to be done, but it makes me feel emotionally different than if I'm like, I've built this process, it's documented, it's delegated, it's moving, or actually, this thing is happening in the business. We're doing automated prospecting and we've created a new campaign, or, you know, we've created content and that's now going to live out and it's evergreen. And you know the difference between something being core and repetitive or being an exploratory task that we're figuring out new ways of doing new things. That for me is fulfillment. That's the level of value creation it needs to be. Yeah. So I need to make sure I'm always doing that. Yeah. And then the other thing for me is just human interaction. Like, if I am, and my wife's exactly the same, by the way, if one of us if we've been working from home and the other person comes in, you know if that person's not spoken to many people, because it's like, I get a feeling you would probably be the same as this as well. Like,
I'm more on an introverted spectrum.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Actually, you will feel if I spoke to too many people, I'll just be exhausted.
Oh, fascinating. Yeah. Oh, that's really fascinating. Yeah, it's the opposite for us. Like, Tara, my wife, called me today and you could tell she's working from home. You could tell she was trying to make conversation because she was like telling me about something. I was like, Donna, I've really got to go. And she's like, okay, that's not good enough. And what else? Like, trying to get her attention. So basically that human connection, that's not just, hey, how are you? Like actual conversation, which I think fuels so many of us.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's only fitting. We started talking a little bit about business that we actually say what businesses you're running.
No, don't worry about that.
We need that for another time. But weightbook.com and HopperHQ. Tell us about them.
Yeah.
How did you get started? What is the product? What do they do?
Sure. So actually, I mean, for context, both of these companies sit under a company called Term Partners. And Term Partners is essentially our startup studio, we badge it as. So we either do acquisition and turnaround, but more recently creation of digital businesses. Our whole premise is largely B2B software as a service, focusing on the future of work is what we love. It's actually started after my NEF year, where I met my co-founder, James. And we were, even though we have very different skill set, you know, we do things in slightly different ways. We're so fundamentally aligned from like an ethics, a moral, what feeling we want from the work that we do. And that's been such an amazing partnership for me to have over the last 10 years or so. So we actually bought a dating business straight after NEF.
I remember that story.
Yes.
Oh, it's so
you've had the full
story.
version of the story, right? So we bought a dating business. It's actually the UK's largest dating site for older women and younger men called Toy Boy Warehouse. And I love it. It's just the most phenomenal business. More than anything, the reason why I love it is it's all human-based, right? Yeah. Our product is other humans, right? And we actually bought it because we were thinking, we can turn this around, we can turn subscription, we can do this, whatever else. What we ended up loving about it was the fact that people would come onto it because they wanted to find relationships, and people had amazing stories and amazing experiences. And that's actually what we really love. So we did a turnaround of that. And then James and I basically moved out of the business. We put a lot of process in, we delegated a lot of stuff, and we looked for the next opportunity. So at the time, Instagram was smashing it, really, it just taken over Twitter. And we kind of knew that there was an opportunity for some sort of tooling within Instagram. We did some MVP tests, spoke to some people. Originally, we wanted to encourage or enable a way for influencers to charge their following for pre-release content. That didn't quite work, but a lot of people told us it was hard to actually post on Instagram. So we actually became the first automated scheduling tool that would automatically post to Instagram, because there wasn't a publishing API at the time, and there were a few people breaking the terms of service. So we found a way to do it in a way that didn't break the terms of service of Instagram.
And this was back in
2015.
2015.
We started at the very end of 2014, so this is 2015 by the time it was soft launched.
Amazing. And based on your initial idea, actually now Instagram just launched subscriptions.
Yeah.
Did you see that? I'm like,
basically, I feel like we should now be getting a percentage of that revenue though. We were a bit ahead. Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense. The whole space has changed on, right? Yeah. Like, and there's so many creators now that are making their lives on social media. And I mean, it's crazy how the platforms are changing and competing with one another. It's gonna turn over entirely.
It's insane.
So we started as a social media planning and scheduling tool for Instagram, mainly on the utility that we could post to Instagram, and then we just had lots of customers because our marketing and sales was auto post to Instagram, and everyone was like, yes, please. So it was, come on, sign up. And then actually we just bootstrapped the business from there. Obviously it was funded by the dating business and what we'd built up. And then it was all customer funded. We just spoke to the customers all day, every day, looked at all of the trends that were happening on social and just built the tools to enable people to do that. And that's still on that journey. So Hopper is now, operates in 75, 80 countries. It works with brands and agencies, some influencers. And it's a great tool. I really love it. I've got a lot of affinity to it.
Why didn't you raise?
Yeah, good question. I have always been very cautious with raising investment, mainly because we've never wanted to raise speculatively to then say, this is an idea or a hypothesis, we want to figure it out. We've almost had this perspective of starting a company rather than a startup. We want a commercial backbone in it. We want there to be sustainability. We want there to be scalability. And if you look at our space within social media planning and scheduling, I actually don't believe there's room for many institutionally backed businesses within that space. There's probably 5, kind of kings and queens within that space. And I think as soon as you go down that path, you almost lose a bit of control in terms of who are and how you run the business. And I don't think that the offset of that control for the potential of the business being 1,000 times bigger was a fair exchange for us at that time.
Yeah. I respect actually that your strategy in business. I feel like we can all be kind of swoon away by VC money to innovate and create new stuff and hypotheses. But actually what matters is to have sustainable businesses that support the employees, support the environment that it's built in, and create a place in the industry while it's all about talking to the customer and engaging regularly and building a sustainable product. So I feel like that's the best way to do business.
It's so true. And I think that we're often clouded in that because the world of VC, the world of investment, whatever else, there's a lot of people almost see that as the success. So they see the raising of money as the output rather than the tool to do the business, right? And sometimes people forget that actually not every business should be VC backable. Not every entrepreneur should be backed. Just in how they want to be, how they want to run the business, the market viability, the scale of the business. So I think actually Hopper could have carried it, but I don't think we at the time wanted to carry it. Like we didn't want that path. Yeah.
There's this creator on TikTok, which I'll tag on this videos. She's always explaining to people how to acquire businesses if they're, for example, risk averse and don't want to start a startup. Why not go for a business that works? Come up with your knowledge and expertise in marketing, improve some of the processes, make it work better. And here you go. You have a sustainable business to live off instead of being an employee, for example. So she's really selling on that. It's a growing trend these days. Yeah, People are starting to see through the whole VC world, especially with happening I
think one of the things that VC is great for, and all sorts of investment, is for innovation and for change. And I think that is actually a lot of businesses that are really, disrupting and are really kind of building great tech and whatever else. Some of them, or most of them, do need heavy investment, right? But I also think that I quite like the problem. I quite like the challenge of doing that from a commercial perspective, figuring out a way to provide value and then iterate on that value and grow. And I actually feel like your businesses at the end of it, we've actually just fallen out of conversations with a big industry buyer for Hopper. We weren't looking to sell it. Somebody very big in the industry got in touch and wanted to buy it. Market changes actually meant that they've decided not to continue for now. What they loved about Hopper was the fact that actually we had been bootstrapped. So every decision we'd made to develop the business, the product, the messaging was so focused on the customer, because we had to do that in the early days, right? We had to be belligerent in what our customers need and want, and make cautious and like considered steps. Sometimes money backing businesses can almost
throw it away.
yeah, it's tough. So you can't speed up everything with cash. I think it's a different journey. It's almost interesting because within Waybook now, I have never been more excited or confident in a business than I am in Waybook. And I actually feel like we've not raised in Waybook either. We've bootstrapped it. I actually feel like putting money into Waybook makes more sense than what we've ever seen in most businesses before. We've not made a call on whether we're going to do that or not.
So what is Waybook?
Basically, we'd done so much within our businesses, and we'd kind of grown because we were pretty process driven. We'd basically systematized our businesses. We had created processes. We'd created SOPs where appropriate, and we were able to document and delegate the aspects of our business to basically run on a really small team. It enabled us to bootstrap. It enabled us to have multi-focus. And actually, as we grew the team, we started to notice that even though we had these really good processes that were largely in Google Docs, it was the transfer of that knowledge and information that was quite difficult. So you might join the team. I'll say, hey, Rita, oh my God, there's so much going on here, as I would usually say. And okay, I've sent you 6 documents and this is happening, and speak to James about this. And actually, Matt's going to tell you this, and Deb's going to tell you this, and I was going to tell you this. And you get all of this information. And I would know that actually we'd shared most of it with you. But 2 things would happen. There would inevitably be things in my head and the head of other team members that weren't documented. And that just doesn't transfer. So you're going to have to ask 100 questions. Also, even though you've got the documents, it's insanely overwhelming. And on Google Docs or Drive or Notion or Dropbox, there's always loads of different versions of the documents. You don't quite know where it is. It's long and scrolling, and it's all text and all sorts. So Waybook is essentially the business playbook builder. It enables you to document your knowledge, your systems, and your processes in a super structured, super searchable, and really dynamic way that actually becomes the onboarding for your team, the training of your existing team, the knowledge base where people will think, where are the logo files? And instead of asking me 50 times a month, they'll just search logo on Waybook, or they'll search logo on the Waybook Slack app or whatever that is. And it has all the knowledge, the information. And it basically is the way to systematize your business. That means that you can then delegate those responsibilities. And from a founder's perspective, it enables me to keep focusing on creating new things. What I mentioned earlier in terms of I feel materially different when I've created new value. I just build a process in Waybook, document, delegate it. I have grown the business. I have done something of value there. And Waybook is the tool that enables you to do that.
Yeah. One of my favorite features on Waybook was when, because we use it in Nav, was when you could see who completed the onboarding or finalized the readings of the processes and how much time they spent on it. That's really good.
It's really good.
You can actually track that.
If I remember correctly, you were quite good at it, right?
I was probably.
I think you went through it quite quickly, though, didn't you? Yeah. If I remember correctly, you went through it quite quickly.
Next day, not reading it.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. And actually, so yeah, you don't just know who's got access to what. You know who's seen what, when they've seen it, if they've completed it. Yep. And the killer is that you can actually put in tests and assessments in it. So here's a piece of information. Here's 2 questions off the back of it. Here's another piece of information. Here's a question. Mm-hmm. So if you're actually sharing knowledge that you don't want someone to just click through, ask a question. Let them, it creates this really interesting dynamic cadence about the knowledge. So
how did you come into building Waybook and Hopper? Do you have a tech background?
No. Yeah. No, I don't.
How did it work? How does that work?
No code in it. Just copy and paste it from GitHub. I think that's what the developers do.
I like that.
Oh, tech team will kill me for even joking about that because they hear it enough internally. No, I don't have a technical background. I am technically proficient enough to have a strong conversation with most developers. My co-founder, James, he's actually got a product background. So he's an industrial designer by training, and then he's a tech product manager, but he's actually quite technical, so he can kind of tinker and do things. But our tech teams are just phenomenal. We've got two front and two back end, which are kind of the heart of our tech teams, and we've worked with them forever, like 7-8 years, and they're part of who we are and how we operate and things like that. So I consider tech as an opportunity to create more and scalable value. I can't write code.
That's all right. So when you have a new feature to build, what is the first thing that you're doing?
What, from a code perspective?
No. If you have like an idea of this is a feature, that would be amazing.
Here's the contact info for Laura Mason.
Who the hell?
I think Laura Mason might be like a friend from university, like many years ago.
Wait, is that Siri in a man's voice?
Yeah.
Okay. I've never heard that.
Oh, really?
I've always heard the woman's voice.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. What's the first step? As in, how does the idea come about?
Yeah, so what would you have an idea, you think this would be a great add-on for Waybook or Hopper.
Yeah.
What would you do next?
Love it. We've got such strong process. Believe it or not, we've got such strong process around this. Our knowledge inputs basically come from marketing, sales, customer. Our customer knowledge inputs basically come from testimonials and conversations. We like to speak to people all day, every day. NPS and cancellation reasons. We basically have a summary of that every 2 weeks, and then we'll speak as a product team to be like, here are our top requests, here are our top thoughts, whatever else, and then that feeds into our product roadmap. This is more on Hopper's side now, because Hopper's bigger, we've got more of a process. That will then get specced, we'll get a design, we'll clarify with people, we'll get a beta program together, blah, 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 and that kind of run throughs. Mm-hmm. The bit that might be more interesting is how we do that in Waybook. So within Waybook, we are still kind of adding and moving so incredibly fast. The product is actually very good. The stat that I literally can't get over myself is we've been around for a couple of years. Once someone's fully activated on Waybook, as in they've put their knowledge in, they put their team in, we've never had any customers leave us. From a SaaS perspective, it's unbelievable. No one has ever left Waybook. So the product is really good, but we're still adding a lot to it. The way it would work, a very good example, somebody says to me on a demo, oh, can you do a recurring verification on a document? So basically, here's an SOP. I want Rita to approve every 6 months that actually this is up to date. It's been on our roadmap for a while. This customer really wants it, and we know it's valuable for lots of other people. I'll speak to design and which is basically James and Dan. We'll get like a proof of concept designed out. I'll take it to that customer and maybe 10 or 20 others and be like, hey, do you want to do this? Is this important? How valuable is this for you? What does this look like to you? Okay, now what does this feel like to you? And if they like it, we're like, let's do it. Let's push it through. And then actually it gets developed. It goes into beta. We'll get people to test it out for, maybe a few hundred people for a week or so, and then we'll push it out.
What's the tech stack for that, for testing products?
We use Mixpanel, and we also use Hotjar, I think. Yeah. We don't put Hotjar on everything that we're pushing out, mainly if it's funnel related. But yeah, we'll use Mixpanel. But the actual early stage of that is basically conversational.
How do you get customers to open up?
People
do you
love
have a process?
People love talking to us. Okay. It's insane, because basically we sell to entrepreneurs, founders, owners that are systematizing and scaling their business. And then we speak to the most senior ops people in the businesses, and then also HR and training. That's like our customer segments in that order. When you're talking to a founder about systematizing their business, and it's like, we're giving you this business playbook so you can operate faster. It's their world, right? Yeah. They're like, oh my God, okay, I put this in. I used to get asked this 15 times a day. No one's asked me this in the last 3 months. It saved me so much time. People want to talk about it. Mm. So actually we have, we have a few hundred customers that I know that if I email, instantly they'll come back and they'll want to jump on a call and things like that.
That's amazing.
And I love them. Like, honestly, I love them. It's almost like, when you get that founder energy and you're speaking to other people doing amazing things in their business, like I get that all day, every day.
So if someone wants to take a step further into like optimizing the process in their business, do you think Waybook would accompany them in that journey in the future
100%.
in terms of like automation and other? Okay, well, basically another way to ask the question is, what's the vision for Waybook?
Yeah, well, they're two very different questions.
They are they? I mean, do you want to go further with your clients, or have a different vision?
Yeah, I mean,
think that's the same
basically, Waybook is the business playbook, right? It takes the business out of your brain and it creates something that lives outside of you. So you and the business are different. It then actually updates, kind of tests, tracks, educates, shares with your team. And if you think about it on its very bare bones, what the vision for Waybook is to remove senior leaders from the day-to-day whirlwind of their task, of the running their business, so they can actually enjoy scaling their business again and empower teams to do their best work. It's not nice not knowing what you don't have to do. That's the kind of vision and what we're doing, and then we will continue to grow and stretch on that. So elements of automation, of course, but actually we have lots of integrations that work with lots of amazing tools. So on our current direction of travel, we're not going to be a fully automation tool, but actually we will work with automation tools that you create the process of how things work. You share and educate that with your team. You can manage how things are working from within Waybook, but we're not an automation tool at the moment. It's very customer led for us. So we believe if we continue to grow our customer base as we are, then we'll always continue to see and spot new opportunities.
Amazing.
But to the point of if somebody wants to systematize their business, the biggest challenge in the business is onboarding and activation. Everybody wants a Waybook because it gives you that peace of mind that the business exists, everybody knows what they're doing, and creates so much headspace from your perspective as a founder that you can work cliche, but you can work on the business rather than in it. But actually getting that to that point is really difficult, creating all of the documents. So the main bit of work we're doing at the moment is on that piece. We are creating structures. So if you're an accountant, if you're a law firm, you can come onto Waybook.
That's amazing.
And it will create you the structure from all of the business we work with.
Oh my God, can you make one for like a coaching or content creation business?
We have that. So, and then we have loads of templates.
Because it's a skill, it's like
it's tough.
in itself.
Yeah.
It's being able to decide that this is the process that I'm going to test and I'm going to go with it and I'm going to transfer that information to everyone. That is a skill.
It is, but it is actually the skill of entrepreneurship and noting.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, there's the work of documenting it, but actually what you do is what you do. So once you've done it, you just bullet point it.
Yeah.
And once you've bullet pointed it, then it's a process. And then you look at that and you're like, oh, let's move that up here, or let's change this way of doing that. So actually it's more about just clarity and prioritizing. So yeah, we have structures when you come in, we have templates, but actually what we launched a couple of months ago, which has been honestly insane, is coaching. So we have internal Waybook coaches, consultants that will work with a company. So we're working with basically the Airbnb's biggest competitor in Canada, for example, at the moment. We're working with their senior leadership team, and our consultant is basically interviewing everybody and just documenting all of their processes, all of their SOPs, that then creates their playbook. So we're now doing that for people.
Not every B2B business. I feel like every tech B2B software company has a consulting element to it, that the business has to have that side.
It's really interesting
with the clients. I mean,
yeah, but I don't know how common it is, because we've looked at this problem for a while, and we tried to solve it with products, and we tried to solve it with customer success, and make sure more people on board and make sure people activate, and actually we've offered a lot of free coaching. So speak to one of our process experts and they'll help get the clarity of what your structure is, help look what a great document is, and then you can go on and do that. But people still want more. They still want like an actual consultation that means that it becomes our consultant's problem, and as a founder, as an ops manager, I'm just answering your questions and then you're going to deliver the content back to me. Whereas I feel like there's a blurred line here between very white glove service, customer support, and kind of customer coaching and product optimization and onboarding. And I feel like, I don't know if it's wildly different. It's definitely more intensive, but it's also positioned in a different way. You know, having great customer support is good, but you wouldn't go to customer support if you have a much bigger problem that you couldn't even dream that they'll solve you.
It is change management, because what these tools are doing are they're building new processes internally or new ways of doing things internally. So sometimes bigger organizations feel like they don't want to handle that because it's a big responsibility. They'll just get the other company who delivers the technology to do that.
And I think you're absolutely right. But I think there's almost different stages of it. So one of them is like, there is chaos in this business. Everything is everywhere. So job one is just, let's create the playbook. And then actually having the playbook empowers teams to do their own change management. Because until you've got, how do we process an invoice? And you realize that actually, Jeffrey in accounting is doing something and checking it 4 times and doing the same work as somebody else. So you can be like, oh, let's just delete that step, and then you update Jeffrey to say, you don't need to do this anymore. I'll just check this system. It almost breaks down the barrier of change management to becoming an iterative amendment of how we operate our businesses. And that's why I love this, because it empowers business owners and senior leaders and team members
to be agile.
To be agile and to focus on like adding value rather than churning on the same challenges that we try and just hold information, So.
Yeah, exactly. So how does it feel to build 2 businesses at the same time, bootstrapped?
Yeah, good question. It feels like running one business. It's the same. But there's 2 of them. No, it does feel different. I'm actually thinking about the differences. There is differences. I think the most misunderstood thing about running multiple businesses is that a lot of people will say, oh, that's great. Yeah, I'd love to just have a couple of businesses. If one doesn't work out, it's fine. You've got the others. It absolutely doesn't work that way. If one isn't working out, then there's more likelihood that the other one doesn't work out as well, because you pull your attention from one to the other. From a commercial perspective at group level, there is, of course, always one most optimal part for return on investment for our group cash. We can make more money on a pound put into Hopper today. Our marketing spend in Hopper will return something faster. But actually within Waybook, the growth of that business, the metrics of that business mean that that's going to switch very quickly. And you almost need to consider them as 2 totally separate entities, 2 totally separate teams, 2 totally separate personalities, and almost be cautious of the learnings that we pull from one to another. But what we've learned is that as soon as a business reaches beyond a certain point of adolescence, it can stand on its own 2 feet.
That adolescence is determined by the ARR.
Yeah.
The business has reached its maturity.
Great question. I would say the adolescence is when you move beyond problem solution fit and move beyond product market fit, and you move beyond the exploration of the fundamental levers of how that business works. As soon as you have those parts in place and the business has the revenue to afford the resources to operate that business with margin and with growth, that is adolescence. Like, that is where the machine is operating and it is moving. So we see, and full credit to Andrew Crump that runs a business called Unkillable, he has this model that he talks about as core and explore. Core are known activities, known things that we know how they happen and they just need to be done within the business. Explore are things opportunities that we need to understand, testing out new marketing channels, testing out new products, A/B testing, bits like that. And he says there's a fundamental difference between explore tasks and core tasks. And our job as founders is to explore, find new ways of doing new things. As soon as we know what they are, let's package them, let's document, let's delegate, let's turn them into core, and then that becomes a business operation. So let's think about day one. I'm on my own and I've got an idea and I want to do something. I have a finite amount of time in my day in order to create value. So what I need to do is make sure that I'm doing the most amount of unique stuff that I can, in the smallest amount of time, essentially. So say, for example, we're a consultancy, and actually the activities I need to do are to find prospect lists, email people, do demos, do sales, onboard new clients, do the actual consultancy work, create new models and frameworks, then do content creation and delivery for clients. Let's take those 8. It's going to be hard for me to do all of that. So I essentially then want to say, what is the highest value, monetary value thing that I can do of my time? It's probably that one-on-one conversation with the client, or if you're creating content that you sell to multiple clients. So let's put a price on that. Let's say that is £1,000 an hour, for argument's sake. Then when you look at all of the other activities that you're doing, and by the way, you've built all of these processes in Waybook, so it's kind of bullet point what you need to do. And you can say, right, well, this one, I can make £1,000 an hour. This one, finding prospect lists, yeah, it's good me going through LinkedIn and pulling people and whatever else, but you've got 2 options. You either buy the lists that have already been scraped or pulled or whatever, or you get somebody who charges less than £1,000 an hour to go through and create those lists. You wear all of these hats. And then as soon as you're at capacity or have any element of free cash, you then just replace yourself on an element that creates continued value and frees up more of your time to create more higher value. And that's the game.
So use the money in the business to take yourself out of the business?
Or to optimize your time for the highest value stuff.
Okay.
And that's when we're looking from the bit that you've really raised something interesting in my mind. That's when we're thinking from the business perspective. The purpose of this business is to maximize the value of the business. I'm thinking from a business director. So yes, I want to reinvest this money. I want to, optimize this, automate this, delegate this. So actually this resource can keep on doing the highest value time. Now, if you think of yourself as a shareholder, and the shareholder being the entrepreneur, the owner, whatever else, for you, maximum value might be minimum time. So actually, you might be reinvesting that money for the purpose of replacing you. If what you want, what your goal is a business that kind of is automated, and does it. So it actually starts with, what do you want from the business? What does success look like? And then that trickles down into how you do it. But that kind of turning explore into core, creating process systems, systematizing and like sharing knowledge happens from day one.
So one last question for you, Mike. Would you ever go to invest in a B2C business? Would you ever build or invest a B2C business? And
we've invested in a few.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, we actually invest quite a lot. And yeah, we've got some really interesting B2C. I love it. I would be interested to go to B2C. I would have to have really strong conviction in it. What I love about B2C, and I guess when I think about B2C, I'm thinking about kind of D2C, B2C, it's almost like digitally enabled. I love that actually your human interface can be a lot more. Your access to humans can be a lot more. We can walk down there and ask people how they feel about a product or a service that we're providing, which means that you almost have like a faster rate of iteration of feedback. Yep. But of course, depending on your product, you can't always change a product like a line of code, If
someone right now is just watching this and wants to start a business and they don't know which way to go, what is the main difference so that they know which way is the best way for them?
Yeah, really good point. That they would almost start as different businesses, right? As in like the product you're providing, the problem you're solving. In a business, people typically have a very clear value of what that business exists for. They are there to run their own business, typically to make money, typically to grow, and also to have the impact they're looking to have. Within that, there would be easily identified and often replicable
value.
To have within the business, and challenges that they're having. So if you were to identify what that challenge is, and if you know that there's a budget line against it, then you can kind of figure that out, and you can go. Now, within consumer, you do have the same model, but actually there's not always a fixed budget against a line item, which is sometimes good, because sometimes you can encourage people more for luxury, or like stuff that they don't necessarily need or want, or whatever else. But there's almost less rigidity around how people are purchasing, and dependent on what you're selling. Brand has a big impact. Yep. I mean, brand has a big impact in B2B, but also the kind of ROI on B2B is more in focus. Yep. So actually, I would almost challenge what you said, in that there's a limit on B2B in terms of how much you can make. I agree that maybe the brand value is limited, but what's not limited is the price that you can charge. If you look at HubSpot, right? HubSpot's pricing for a lot of businesses is insane. A lot of my friends pay, like tens, 20s of thousands on a recurring basis, because the value that they're solving, or the value they're creating, is worth more to that business. They're enabling businesses. For us, Waybook, we basically charge, it's about $4 per person per month. It is a no-brainer that actually somebody will pay $4 for their team member to have access to all of their knowledge when they need it. They replace one question, they save one asynchronous cycle of communication. The value's there, right? Which means that actually, if we're creating business value that makes more value, then you can command a larger part of capturing that value and grow with them. Typically, consumers will be limited to what their expenditure is.
Thank you so much for being here, Mike,
No,
today.
thank you.
It's been great catching up.
I
really missed hearing you talk.
Likewise.
I think I need to sign up to NEP again, or some other program, just to keep that conversation.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks.